Boy, what a week it's been. It's only Tuesday so far. Sometimes I sit down and record these Morning Pitt videos, and I'll have lots of things written down that I want to talk about. Like, what was this? Oh, UCLA. This was UCLA stats. Because for yesterday's Morning Pitt, we had to talk about the Sun Bowl. We had to talk about Pitt facing UCLA, what to expect from UCLA, some of their stat leaders, some of their production. And then over here we have a few notes on the basketball game. Like Pitt was leading by 5 at half, and then the lead went to 11, and just kind of that rundown. You probably see me glancing down at the page. But sometimes I have to write these things down to just kind of guide each video. How we're going to get through the 20 minutes or half hour that we do for these morning pits. Well, I have a little bit of an outline. Don't need that today, do we? Some days you're not really sure if you're going to have anything to talk about. Today is not one of those days. Welcome to the Morning Pit here on a Tuesday edition. And again, it feels like it's about the third half of this week. As we're, rolling through, I feel like it's the end of the week. I feel like it should be the weekend, but it's only Tuesday. We're only one day into this week, and it has already been pretty nuts so far. And that's why we're here on the Morning Pit, to get you caught up to speed on everything you need to know to start your day right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. While you're here, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. The subscribe button, it's down there. It's small, but it's down there on the yellow .com. It's a little blue rectangle. Click that thing and turn on the notifications. That way you'll always get an alert anytime we post a new video or when we go live for our Panther-Lair show, which we are doing tonight at 8:30. Pitt has a basketball game tomorrow night at Vanderbilt, 9 o'clock. I'm not going to be there, but I don't want to be doing a live stream in the middle of the game. I want to watch the game just like you do. So we're not going to do the live stream tomorrow night. We're going to do it tonight, a special Tuesday night edition of the Panther-Lair show right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's going to start at 8:30, and you're going to forget by the time it's 8:30. Like, you're watching this video right now, you're listening to the podcast, you're going to forget. Because you get caught up in the day, you have other things going on, you're not thinking about it at 8:30 tonight. It's a long time from now. Well, do yourself a solid, click the subscribe button, turn on notifications, you'll get an alert sent to your phone so that you always know when we go live. It'll say, hey, Panther-Lair is going live. You better tune in right now because there's a whole heck of a lot to talk about. And I'm sure there will be by 8:30 tonight. Even if we just talk about some of the things we're going to talk about this morning, there's going to be a lot going on, I'm sure, over the course of this day, because it's just how it is. December is always a wild time. There's always a lot going on in the month of December with recruiting, as the coaches work to, fill out the recruiting class and kind of bring it all together and, bring it home, so to speak, heading toward that third Wednesday in the month. I think it's the 21st is the date of, 2 weeks from tomorrow, actually, is the date of signing day. And so there's always a lot going on. It's always busy. It's always exciting. But this year, it's especially rip-roaring because of the transfer portal. I guess it officially opened yesterday, and it was wild. I mean, it was crazy to watch on a national level. It was crazy to watch, if you want to get regional or just pay attention to the ACC. And it's been crazy to watch on the Pitt front because there was a ton of activity yesterday with transfers and with commitments. And, I was trying to think about, I threw my notepad over there, but I was trying to think about where to start. Because there were 3 big quarterback developments yesterday, as you are well aware. There were 3 big quarterback developments yesterday, and I guess we'll start with the guy who left. Because that was really kind of what kicked it off. And it might have been a case where A led to B, led to C, or it might have been a case where A, B, and C all sort of happened and were going to happen and happened somewhat independent of each other. I think there's a couple of different ways to look at it and a couple of different ways you could consider it. But it really started with Kedon Slovis. And we talked about this over the weekend, that we were hearing this was going to happen. We were expecting it to happen. And then he entered the transfer portal. 1 season for Kedon Slovis here at Pitt after playing 3 years at USC. Came in, I think, with the expectation of playing 1 year, having a great year, and going to the NFL. That did not happen, and now he's going to look for another school to play his final year of eligibility. Some early rumors indicated that Mizzou might be Missouri might be his destination. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We hear conflicting reports. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter where he goes. All that matters is that he's gone. He's not at Pitt anymore, because what's relevant to us is what happens with Pitt. And, to that end, Kedon Slovis is not going to be on the roster in 2023. Kedon Slovis leaves having played in 11 games, throwing for about 2,400 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions, 7 yards per attempt, or 7.6 yards per attempt. Actually, a higher yards per attempt than he had his previous 2 years at USC. There's no question that his biggest year was his freshman year at USC. 12 games, 3,500 yards, 30 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. But I don't think it was a huge drop-off to the following season. Yeah, I mean, he did. His numbers went down in almost every regard. He only played 6 games, but I guess he actually he was on pace for more touchdowns. He had 17 interceptions or 17 touchdowns in 6 games as opposed to 30 in 12. It ultimately doesn't matter. And we can litigate and relitigate and rehash and negotiate and debate the reasons that Kedon Slovis didn't have as much success this year as he was expected to, didn't have as much success this year as he had at USC, didn't have as much success this year as Pitt needed him to. And I think there are a number of reasons for it. I think there are a number of reasons why it didn't work out here. He wasn't a good fit for this offensive system. And as much as I thought Frank Cignetti could or would tailor it to his skill set, that didn't really happen, outside of a few flashes here and there. There's no question Kedon Slovis can make all the throws. I think he's got an NFL caliber arm. He did not play like an NFL quarterback this year, and if we're led to believe Frank Cignetti's offense is an NFL offense, a pro-style offense, that doesn't bode well for Kedon Slovis' NFL prospects. Someone who is a pro prospect should flourish or should be able to succeed or at least play effectively in an offense that is, presumably, or so we're told, a pro-style offense. And he didn't. It never clicked for him. It just didn't work. And maybe he wasn't a good fit with the program. Maybe he wasn't a good fit with his team. Maybe he wasn't a good fit with the coaches. I don't know. I'm not behind closed doors. This is the point where all the stories and things like that come out, and we hear about this and we hear about that, and it's to some extent sometimes I look at it and say, well, why didn't you tell us that before? Why was that? Why was everybody hiding that? If this guy was a bad teammate, or this guy was this, or this guy was that, don't wait until they're gone and kick dirt on them as they're walking out the door. Nevertheless, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, what matters is Pitt went 8-4 with Kedon Slovis as their starting quarterback. I mean, technically they went 7-4 with Kedon Slovis as their starting quarterback. He doesn't get credit for the Western Michigan game. He does get credit for winning 4 games to end the season, winning all 4 games in November when he played relatively well, finished pretty strong, had a pretty strong finish to the season. But I said at the beginning of the year, and I said it in August, when I was predicting that this team would win 10 games, I said, look, what it's ultimately going to come down to is the play at quarterback. And play at quarterback is going to be the determining factor between whether this team goes back to Charlotte or back to 8 wins. And if you watch the live Panther-Lair show often enough, if you watch these Morning Pitt videos often enough, if you read the things I write on Panther-Lair.com often enough, you've heard me say that a million times. You probably got sick of hearing it. But it was the truth. And remain the truth, and the play at quarterback, whether that's on the quarterback or the coordinator, or the offense or the scheme or the play calling or whatever it is, and I think there's a variety of reasons that it wasn't up to snuff, but it wasn't good enough. And they went back to 8 wins. Instead of going back to Charlotte, where they very well should have been, they went back to 8 wins. And that's going to be Kedon Slovis's probably quickly forgotten legacy at Pitt. Played for 1 year, played more games than Max Brown did, had more success than Max Brown did. Ultimately, will probably be largely forgotten like Max Brown was, unless, only kind of coming up as a trivia question of, who is that guy who played quarterback for Pitt the year after Kenny Pickett? Well, it was Kedon Slovis. He was here. Now he's gone. And in his place comes Phil Dracovic. Former Pine Richland quarterback, 4-star prospect, Notre Dame quarterback for a couple years, then a transfer to Boston College, is going to play his 6th year, his super senior season at the University of Pittsburgh. And he announced that also on Monday, really shortly after the announcement came that Kedon Slovis was going into the transfer portal. Phil Jurkovec announced that he is transferring to Pitt. And from the time that Jurkovec announced he was going to enter the transfer portal, Pitt was sort of talked about as being a likely destination. We talked about it on the message board as more than just putting 2 and 2 together and guessing. We had some solid sources saying this was realistic and even likely to happen. And it did. And it really only seemed to take Kedon Slovis officially putting in his papers before Jurkovec said, all right, I'm in. And it gets interesting now, because Jurkovec is a guy who had a really good season and then has battled injuries the last 2 years. He's played 14 games the last 2 seasons. 2020 was his best year. He played 10 games, threw for 2,500 yards, 61% of his passes, 17 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. That was his best season. The last 2 years, as I say, he's only played 14 games. He's thrown about 2,600 yards total, 18 touchdowns and 12 interceptions in those 14 games. Played 8 games this year, threw for 1,700 yards, 11 touchdowns, 8 picks. Not great numbers, and quite frankly, the year before, 7 touchdowns and 4 picks in 2021. Not great numbers. His best year, like I said, was 2020, and it just so happens that year he was working with Frank Cignetti, and that's the hook here. That's the angle. That's the the right way to say it. I mean, you go back and you watch his film, you watch how he played, you look at the stats, you look at this, you look at that, you say, is this the guy that's going to come in and save you? I mean, I don't mean that as disrespect to Phil Jurkovec. He can make all the throws. I mean, like, he's got an awesome arm. He can run. He's got all the physical tools. And certainly, Boston College did not put the best offensive line in front of him. And that's something that has to be considered. But when you look at the reasons why Phil Jurkovec is coming here, the reasons why Pitt wanted him, and the reasons why you think, okay, maybe this can work, is you've got someone to vouch for him in the person of Frank Cignetti. Cignetti knows who Jurkovec is. Cignetti knows what Jurkovec can do. Cignetti knows what kind of player he is and what he can bring and how he fits in the offense. And unlike last year when Cignetti came into Pitt and they already had the playmakers established and they already had the offensive line and they already had Kedon Slovis, and Cignetti was sort of figuring out what Pitt had. He's now a year into it. He knows what they have. He has a pretty good idea probably of who they have coming back. And he knows what kind of quarterback they need, at least to win in 2023. And he's decided that Phil Jurkovec is the guy. That's going to be an important decision for Frank Cignetti. And there's going to be a competition in the spring. I mean, just like if you had asked me last year in mid-December who I thought would win the starting quarterback job, I would have said Kedon Slovis. So to now what I say that if you ask me who will win the starting quarterback job, I'll say Phil Jurkovec. He's being brought in to be the starter. He's coming here to be the starter, just like Kedon Slovis was brought in to be the starter and came here to be the starter. Phil Jurkovec will be the starter. I'm fairly confident about that. I don't get a lot of predictions right, but I'm pretty sure this is a pretty safe prediction that you can probably take to the bank. And so Frank Cignetti, and by extension Pat Narduzzi, are hitching their wagons to Phil Jurkovec and saying, this is our guy. This is the guy who's going to help us rebound from a disappointing 8-4 season in 2022 to do much better against tougher competition in 2023. And we'll see how that works out. I like I say, I think all those physical tools are there for Jurkovec. If he really is a good fit for Cignetti's offense like he was in 2020, then this could work. You know what I mean? I think the offensive line that they're poised to bring back at Pitt looks pretty good. I think you've got valuable experience for young players this year. I think you've got some veterans who could come back and be pretty good. And I think depending on a few key decisions, You could have a pretty good set of skill players around them too, in addition to anybody they might bring in as a transfer. So you should have pretty good personnel on offense. And then it'll come down, once again, to the play at quarterback. And Cignetti decided, Narduzzi endorsed or signed off on, however you want to put it, that this is the guy who can make it happen. And just like Slovis, I mean, all the physical tools are there, better physical tools, because Jurkovec can really run. I mean, he is a threat to run RPOs. He's a threat to, keep the ball and, run quarterback draws. And I think in the red zone, he's going to be an option. He had a rushing touchdown. I was watching some highlights earlier today. He had a rushing touchdown against Virginia Tech, I think the clip was from, in 2021. I think that's who it was. Had a really nice rushing touchdown and a couple of nice running plays. I think I think Pitt knows they need a quarterback who can keep plays alive with his legs, a quarterback who can get out and run, and they want to find that. And Jurkovec can bring that element. So we'll see how it goes. But that's the veteran quarterback who's coming in to be the starter. And I think that was one of the priorities. I think there were a lot of priorities, I should say present tense. I think there are a lot of priorities for Frank Cignetti and his offensive staff right now with quarterbacks. And chief among them was finding that veteran starter to come in and play, a veteran transfer to come in and start in 2023. And one of the other priorities is a high school prospect. Of course, Kenny Minchey decommitted and has since committed to Notre Dame. I think they wanted to find another high school guy to come in and fill that spot in the class, and they really were scrambling to some extent over the last month as Minchey slipped away and ultimately decommitted. And in the last week, they landed on Ty Diefenbach. He's a two-star prospect from California. He was committed to UNLV. He's a guy who plays at a California public school, which the top quarterbacks in the state generally find themselves getting recruited to and playing for prep schools. But Diefenbach stayed at his high school. Rather new to the quarterback position. He's played it just for a couple years. After playing wide receiver early in his career, as the story goes, as I read in the LA Times, he was playing receiver, and during practice one day was just sort of throwing passes to his receiver teammates, and the coaches said, "Wait, looks like a really good pass, actually." And the rest is history, as they say. Diefenbach was the starter. His first year as a starter was 2021, and that was his best year. He completed 63% of his passes, about 2,700 yards, 34 touchdowns, and 9 picks. As a sophomore, he threw 9 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. This year, he only played 6 games due to injury. Didn't really play great in those games. Less than 50% completions, 5 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. But he's a big quarterback. 6'5", 200 pounds. He can run. Rushed for 1 touchdown this year, 3 last year, 2 the year before. So about almost 500 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns in the last 3 seasons. And he's an intriguing prospect. He's not ready to play right now. He's going to come in and he's going to develop. But there is still a world where that can happen, where a high school quarterback could go to a college and develop for a year or two and not necessarily jump right into the starting lineup. And I think that's what they wanted to find. I think there were 3 goals, and I keep saying were, but this is really a present tense situation. There's 3 goals for the Pitt coaches right now. They want to get a veteran transfer who can come in and be the starter. They want to get a high school prospect who can come in and grow and develop. And they want to get a younger transfer, like a freshman, sophomore, maybe redshirt sophomore or redshirt freshman transfer who can come in and be around for a couple of years, but they've already got some experience in college football. They know their way around. If you need them to be the backup, they can fill that role because they've got experience. Even if they haven't played a ton, they've been in the environment before. And I think that's what they wanted to find. And then ultimately, I think they're hoping to fill out the 4-man quarterback room with Nate Yarnell, assuming he stays. And, just kind of feel like you have to say assuming he stays about everybody because you never know who's going to stay and who's going to transfer. So those were the goals and the objectives. And obviously, they got Phil Jurkovec to fill the starter role, the veteran transfer role, and then Ty Diefenbach filling the high school role. And Diefenbach will come in for his official visit this weekend, and then plans to enroll in January. So we'll be back at Pitt and starting his college career rather soon. It is interesting that he committed without ever actually taking an official visit or taking a visit at all to Pittsburgh. Frank Cignetti went and visited him on Saturday. Tim Salem was out seeing him yesterday. And so kind of those guys plus a bunch of phone conversations really solidified the relationship and compelled Diefenbach to make his commitment before he even sets foot on campus. Now, obviously, if he does get to campus and says, I hate it here, I don't know what's the weather supposed to be this weekend. Let's look. Saturday, high of 45. Sunday, high of 44. So not bad around here. Might feel cold to a kid from California, but we'll see how he handles the weather and the environment in Pittsburgh. But really was sold by Frank Cignetti and Tim Salem on an NFL offense, an offense that can prepare him for the next level, and an opportunity here to play not necessarily 2023, but to compete for the job heading into 2024. And everything Diefenbach heard, he liked, and he convinced him that it was where he wanted to be. And so he committed yesterday. So a pretty busy day on the quarterback front. One quarterback leaving via transfer, one coming in via transfer, and one high school prospect coming in. And I don't think it's going to slow down. I think there's more action and activity coming on the quarterback front, and really just recruiting and transfers, because that's what happens this time of year. It's wild times. So, and we'll be here to talk about it every day at Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com, and of course, message boards where you can talk to other Pitt fans. And believe me, with everything that's been going on, Pitt fans have a lot to talk about right now, and they are talking a lot. Very active on the message boards these days, as you can imagine, at Panther-Lair.com. So go check it out, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. And of course, right here at YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com, we ask you to subscribe. Just click that subscribe button down there. Like this video as well. Do both of those things. I would very much appreciate it. And make sure you tune in tonight, 8:30 p.m. We'll be live for the Panther-Lair Show, talking about all these quarterback topics and everything else that developed and came out today on the recruiting front and the transfer front. It's going to be every day with this stuff, so you don't want to miss any of it. Tune in tonight for the live show. We'll get the chat screen going over there on the left side of your screen, or right side of your screen, excuse me. It's my left hand, your right side. We'll have the chat screen going so you can post your comments and your questions, and I'll read and answer as many of them as we can over the course of our hour. So 8:30 tonight, right here, YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Tune in for the live Panther-Lair Show. To be a lot of fun. It always is. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight. I appreciate it. Or this morning, I guess it is. Tuning in tonight is what I would say at the end of the Panther-Lair Show. But thanks for watching this video today, or listening to the podcast whenever you do it, whatever hour of the day you do. We really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun to do these ever since the beginning of August, and it continues to be fun now as we move into August, September, October, November, month 5, our 5th month of the Morning Pitt, right here on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It continues to be fun. So I appreciate you checking it out, as always, every day, Monday through Friday. So like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and have a great rest of the Tuesday. We'll talk to you tonight for the live stream, the live Panther-Lair Show. Then we'll be back tomorrow morning for another Morning Pitt right here on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com.